How was Bali?
Bali was good. Really enjoyed it. Just sat next to a
Do
pool
you have any
first.
bintangs?
Oh, man. Didn't have any bintangs. I had a few of them, mate. I had one and I couldn't stop.
Beautiful, mate. Sounds stunning. Lovely to have you back.
No, it's all good. And apologies to our cherished listeners for putting up with 5 weeks of serious disruption.
Yeah,
You've been left
I know.
with no clue about what's going on in the world of technology, essentially.
Dribs and drabs only.
Dribs and drabs. Unfortunately, you didn't miss much. Hopefully you were
It's
reading...
pretty much the best time.
Hope-
Best
hope-
time to go away.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we covered all the important stuff. Hopefully you were reading techcrunch.com, doing your homework.
Yep.
Hopefully you were checking out The Verge.
This is a quiz. Hacker News. Perhaps you were perusing.
We're perusing Hacker News and seeing what the enlightened users of Hacker News were saying in the comments, because we're usually pretty aligned with those guys.
K-pop Demon Hunters. We did mention it a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I want to show you a little something that I've got
Okay.
first.
All right.
Now, you know, I typically carry a black backpack. It's got a nice new addition.
Oh,
This little cutie.
folks, I'm looking at a hot pink Labubu hanging off Raf's backpack. Where did you acquire that one? I've heard they're in short supply.
Yes, in London, there was a line for the Labubu store.
And you just naturally join queues that you see? And you
Yeah,
got-
I've come around to them. Everyone else wants one. I want one.
Rene Girard talked about mimetic desire. and the idea that one only wants something because other people do, and it spreads sort of like a virus.
Yeah.
And you were doing it basically to prove, as Peter Thiel does, the Girardian worldview.
Yeah, exactly. It is what it is, folks.
And look, we are talking about East Asian cultural dominance today, so that was a nice little segue. No, it is good. We did bring it up. I think we brought it up in the context of, I can't remember, but I think you said it's been on rotation in your household.
Yeah, in the various hire cars at the time. But yeah, the second we touched down in England and met up with some cousins over there, they were like, "Oh, you got to watch this movie," to my kids.
And you were like, "Well, hold on a second. Hold on. I'm not watching anything."
Yeah, K-pop Demon Hunters went on.
Yeah.
And it's obviously been a phenomenon. It's
Yeah.
worth remarking on.
It's worth remarking on. So it's actually, when you messaged and said that we should do an episode on K-pop Demon Hunters, I said, that's a good idea, because it does actually touch on a bunch of down around stuff, streaming, culture, the country of South Korea, which we're quite interested in. We're more interested on like the semiconductor production side, and support infrastructure they have, and less on
High bandwidth memory, that kind of stuff.
high bandwidth memory. We're less interested in the production of K-pop, but also, given that we are cosmopolitans and men about town, we're also interested in what is dominating the airwaves today, scientifically, of course. But no, so for those of you who aren't aware, and I would imagine most of you probably are at least glancingly aware, K-pop Demon Hunters is Netflix's latest smash hit. It's the most watched movie on the service ever, overtaking, as the reporting has suggested, the movie Red Notice starring The Rock, which I've certainly never watched. And
I've never even heard of it.
I don't think anyone on earth, including the people who've watched it, could recite what happens in that film. But apparently it was the most watched piece of Netflix content before now. I think that movie cost $250 million to make, which just shows you how absurd the numbers in streaming world are. But anyway, it's an animated movie. It's about a K-pop band that fights demons. That's right there in the title for you. It was made by Sony Pictures, distributed by Netflix, with the rights owned by Netflix, which we'll talk about in a sec. But the point is that it's a global smash hit. And what did you think of it, Raf, having watched it?
To be honest, I kind of popped in and out, so I didn't get the full narrative.
But the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's got some real bops in there.
Yeah.
I did a bit of reading on the producers and whatever, of which there's about 17 producers on it,
Yeah.
and various writers. But it seems to take. I mean, look, it's hit at what feels like the exact right time, right? Where K-pop has obviously been ascendant for a decade. Like, does anyone remember Gangnam Style?
I'm hitting that one on the daily.
Yeah, and then, but obviously, it is kind of permeated, I suppose, Western culture. I remember a few years ago, you'd see TikToks of Western police officers with tattoos of various K-pop bands and what have you, and and phrases like Trump is mad at K-pop for smurfing his rallies. And that's why TikTok was originally banned. That was the original. That was like one of the original theories for the original TikTok ban was because of K-pop, as in K-pop TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Which didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time, and in retrospect, you have to say makes even less sense. But
and then combine that obviously with that TV show I've never seen, where they wear the masks and there's like a battle royale
Squid Game
thing. Squid Game, thank you. That was another South Korean smash hit, but obviously in the visual medium. It seems to make sense now, as well as like the death of cinemas, that you have this kind of coalescence of, and obviously like superhero movies are so friggin' massive.
Yeah.
You kind of got all these things converging to kind of tick every box.
It hits on the touchstones, but it is actually interesting just from like the down round perspective, talking about companies and whatnot, to talk about like what happened and like why Netflix has made it and where Sony comes in. So basically,
exactly. That's what I wanted to get to.
So Sony struck a deal with Netflix back in 2021, which was, as we know, pandemic times. COVID was on. No one was going to the cinema. There was lots of crazy theories flying around that made people would never go to the cinema again. Hollywood was roiled. This was the era where it accelerated the push into streaming for a lot of these companies. Sony was a little bit high and dry. They had no streaming service. They still don't, which we'll talk about in a bit maybe. So they struck basically like a deal with Netflix where Netflix would have first dibs on a bunch of Sony content to distribute, and Netflix would fund the production and then give sort of like a flat fee to Sony. That's what they did with K-pop Demon Hunters. It started production then. Netflix took it. I believe it was $120 million that they paid Sony for it. It was $100 million cover production plus a $20 million premium, which is peanuts, basically.
Yeah.
That's sort of nothing. Fast forward to it coming out. It drops on Netflix. It turns into a global smash hit, which has left Sony looking kind of stupid out of that deal. Again, got to remember the fact that this was in pandemic times when no one knew what the hell was happening.
Yeah. I mean, can we touch on this? So off this movie, or this one movie, Sony's going to make $20 million. This is a multi-billion-dollar franchise already.
Yeah.
Right? Sony made the call to not start their own streaming platform.
Yeah.
Right? And like these deals were kind of signed during COVID, as you said. That, like, this is a classic case of like Sony have kind of looked pretty smart through all this, while like all these other streaming services are struggling to make any profit with any profit in sight, in the long term. Sony sat it out and said, our core competency is making films, if you ignore all those other aspects of the things that are named Sony. But, in this case,
Sony Pictures,
here. We stick with that. Netflix, whoever wants to buy them can buy off us, like Paramount, whoever. You deal with customer acquisition and all that kind of crap. We'll stick with this. We'll get our flat fees. Obviously, it limits the risk there. They don't have to waste all that money or take this huge risk on, becoming a streaming platform. But quite obviously, it also limits the upside potential. This is the thing in business. You got to make this call. What's your TAM?
Yeah.
Well, how much is it going to cost to get it though?
Sony is such a weird beast, and we've talked about this in Down Round before. They were insanely ahead of the curve on the thesis that culture was going to come together with technology. Like, they knew this in the 1980s. And in the 90s, when like Disney was like, oh, the game is like animation, doing like spin-off animation of movies, theme parks, in-person experiences, all that shit. Sony was understanding that, no, the game is like technology platform, launch PlayStation. Obviously, the Walkman was the first, when it came out, was like the first major portable music device. They bought this Sony Pictures. When it was Columbia Pictures, they turned into Sony Pictures. They were ahead of the curve and all that sort of stuff. But kind of since then, and I'm not going to say that Sony hasn't been successful because it has been incredibly successful, but it's been so bad at like bringing together all its constituent parts. Like,
Yeah.
its software platforms haven't synced with its music players I mean, they don't really do a whole lot of music players anymore. PlayStation, only recently have they been like, oh, we've got all this crazy video game IP and we need to start turning it into movies and TV shows and going multi-platform. They didn't have a streaming service. It's like they've got a constellation of great brands that don't really talk to each other.
Yeah, it's like they saw it early and got kind of 90% of the way
but
there.
got
They
all the
couldn't square
pieces
circle.
and then just didn't bring it together. And this is obviously evidence of, as we've said, streaming has been a money pit and a really difficult thing to get off the ground. But now they're stuck with absolutely nothing.
But I mean, it goes back to even like, the electronics component. And I know these are relatively separate, like in the scheme of things, companies. But regardless, they do sit under like a vague umbrella, I suppose. But like, they kind of fumbled a bit with mobile.
Yeah.
Despite having, Sony devices have always been cool. But yeah, again, like, but they've got that PlayStation stuff there. But it just never kind of, despite being so dominant when it came to Walkmans and then Discmans and CDs and CD players, they just kind of missed then on the digital aspect of everything, which is where the thing that they saw coming comes together.
And I mean, just like put it out there, they have a massive hardware install base with PlayStation. They have a subscription service on PlayStation with many, many millions of subscribers. Why can't they, like, there is some, I don't know what the current deal is, but if you sign up for PlayStation Plus, which is like their Sony subscription service, and you get access to games and can play online and whatever, you do get like some Sony movies. Like there's some, but it's not a full streaming service. It's like some weird, awkward bolt-on. And you can buy Sony movies through the platform and other movies. It's like at iTunes. But it's like, why can't they do an Apple One, and have you get PlayStation? You get all the Sony library. You get all this sort of shit. You feel like they could make something. But anyway, they were stuck with they were caught with their pants down when it looked like cinemas were busted. They've given away a bunch of these movies. And now, getting to like the Netflix side of the ledger, Netflix has, I would say, their first ever like Disney level IP smash hit that is obviously going to go like multi-platform, have a million different spin-offs. They're talking about live action version. They're talking about sequels. They're talking about video games. They're talking about all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because until now, Netflix has actually struggled super hard with this. There's three things that they've had. I think I was thinking about this. I was like, 3 shows or movies that have been like proper potential IP juggernauts. The closest they've got, I think, is Stranger Things. Stranger Things is kind of everywhere. It was really popular. I don't think they expected it to be. It's like an 80s retro throwback thing back when, I mean, like we have like an 80s throwback moment every like 5 years now, where everyone is suddenly like, I love neon font and like synthwave and the movies of Steven Spielberg, or, that kind of shit. It rode that wave. But then they've just like, it's popular, it's really big. There's merchandise. You see people in Stranger Things t-shirts and shit. But it's like...
Yeah, and as well as like, something's pretty big when you'll just randomly see like the Stranger Things experience on in the entertainment quarter in November.
Yeah.
And you can like buy tickets to something.
Yeah.
Like, things are pretty big when that happens. But as you say, like...
That's the closest they've gotten, but then they've kind of fucked up the role. They made a mobile game. There's no spin-off shows. There's no movies. They've just like... They tried to have it both ways with like their Netflix drop everything at once and like spread out viewing. And now like Stranger Things comes out every few years as like 90-minute episodes, exceedingly high budget. It does create a bit of buzz, but it kind of goes nowhere. And like it's now going to die out because the kids who were like 10 years old when they started filming are all in their 20s, or getting close to it. So that's the closest they've gotten. Then there was Squid Game, also South Korean. You mentioned it. Unbelievable global smash hit, and then Netflix just completely fumbled. They released a bunch of weird crap that everyone was like, what is this? Now they're doing like an American version of it. Too late. Craze is gone. The second season flopped. All the merchandising stuff sort of fell flat. They had it in their hand, and then they just dropped the ball. And then the third one is a bit of a weirder one. It's a TV series called Money Heist,
Never heard of it.
Well, that's because it's not. It's really popular in Europe. Like, it's a massive cultural phenomenon in Europe. Like, Money Heist. I mean, if you're gonna heist something,
Exactly.
aside from
Jelly beans.
you got rare art and then money.
Yeah.
So they're the two things that you can be heisting. Maybe gold bars.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
That is money, mate.
That's pretty.
That is money. That's
It's pretty.
everything went wrong when it stopped being.
So those are the kind of and then they have a few hits where it's like they're true crime documentaries, but you can't IP that stuff. You can't be selling action figures and T-shirts of convicted serial killers.
Not morally, anyway.
It's just not what you can do. But anyway, this is obviously it. They've got it. It's in their hand, and it's going to be huge. It's their first time. It's like Disney level IP.
Absolutely. You can see it already. Like, each of the characters can have their own spin-offs. They can release their own albums. You know, they all can have their own merchandise lines and social media. At Netflix Gaming, we've talked about it. It's something they've been trying to get going. This is such an obvious gaming play here. Like, you have friggin' superheroes, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Like, K-pop superheroes. You can just see... You can see it already. Like, I'm sure that the people in Netflix, as that line started going up of viewership, just the pupils of their eyes just started like morphing into dollar signs, and they kind of leaned back on their chair.
And it actually caused Netflix to break their complete allergy. I mean, they have experimented a bit with this, but like Netflix hates being forced to do cinematic stuff, doing like wide cinematic releases, because Reed Hastings seems to believe it's completely undermines the value proposition. But they did like a marquee event, global sing-along screenings over a course of a few days of K-pop.
Yeah, and it was like the most tickets sold that weekend in cinemas, right?
Yeah, exactly. I personally would not have attended one of those. It's not quite my bag.
At my daughter's school, at 5 to 9 or whatever in the morning, they always play a song, which is like, get the kids ready to go to your zones or whatever.
Yep.
And they were playing Golden, I think it was.
Yep.
And I've never seen anything like it. Like, usually, to be honest, they play like Beach Boys or something like that, which don't get me wrong, like, I like the Beach Boys, but the kids
Brian
are
Wilson,
like,
genius, R.I.P. But
yeah, but just some song like "Wish They All Could Be California Girls." The kids are just like, meandering. They put K-pop, they put Golden on. It is like a mosh pit. Like, it's crazy. You've got a whole school of children shrieking every single word to this song. It's nuts.
I don't think that's conducive to a educational environment. What's the pedagogical value in having kids mosh to Korean music?
The Chinese must be studying this.
Yeah, you would think so.
Anyway, so big smash hit. A bit of, I guess, a bag fumble for Sony-ish. And kind of adding insult to injury for Sony is that they didn't even, or Sony Music Group didn't get the rights to the music. It's all under Republic Records, which is Universal Music Group. So again, like, how close is Sony Music Pictures to Sony Music? There is a relationship, but the fact that Sony didn't even get like what is probably the biggest album, definitely the biggest album in the world right now. I saw the top 10 Billboard top 10 songs, 6 of them were from K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah.
So, like, that's crazy. Obviously, Sony didn't know what they had on their hands. Let's be frank.
And like this, and the further insult is that apparently Sony Music rather was pretty instrumental with like the globalization of K-pop in the beginning, because obviously, like, at its core, there's like 4 big South Korean record labels that do, like, they grow these K-pop artists in vats in a lab underneath Seoul or whatever, and then they do all the cultivation and the production and all that sort of stuff. The global distribution was initially done, Sony was a big player there via Sony Music Japan, but now Universal is pretty dominant. They stole BTS, and well, stole is probably not right, but anyway. But the point being that Sony has taken a little bit of an L on all facets of this.
Speaking of those, the vats that they grow the K-pop bands in, so EJ, apparently the woman who sings Golden, or sings, a bunch of the songs, but Golden's my favorite one, amazing vocal range. She apparently was in one of those, those like kind of, it's almost like a reality TV, or reality / competition things to like form those K-pop groups where you kind of put yourself through hell. Sorry, not hell. You put yourself through a rather intense, I would say like gymnastics-like experience to attempt to then become put into one of these, K-pop groups to be a star. Apparently, she went through that process for 10 years and never made it into one of these groups. Like at the end of every year, just kept at it for 10 years, got rejected. But she's the singer of Golden, because they're a bit older, obviously, the singers now. So there you go. Isn't that a good news, happy story?
I think that's beautiful.
She's part of Huntrix. But the flip side is, how would Sony have capitalized on this? And, they still might, right? I'm sure they can renegotiate the deal for, like, the follow-up and all of the spin-outs, because they're going to want to use Sony's animation house and whatnot.
Yeah, they're still producing. They still had creative control over the movie. Netflix had no weigh in on what the actual movie was. It was all Sony.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, whilst for this, like, literal one release, 20 mil seems like not much, given it, as I said, like, quite obviously worth billions and billions of dollars at this point. A, they're going to make some cash out of it. B, I don't really like the slander, because, like, what you're being like, what a bag fumble from Sony. They didn't know that they had this smash hit on their hand. It's like, what you'd need to go back and do is just completely, like, how many billions of dollars would they have had to burn to put themselves into a situation to capitalize on this fully, like, over the past 10 years, as well as okay, here's a big question. So there's that, whatever. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
And, like, because I want to be clear, like, honestly, the media streaming landscape isn't something that I follow massively closely. I'll glance at Netflix earnings and that's about it. But do you think that this would still have been the hit that it was if it was like a cinema release? If it wasn't on Netflix, basically?
It's a good question. And I think part of the reason it's such a hit is, and I've heard this, not just from you, but a bunch of my other friends that have kids, is that, like, it has been on repeat in the households on Netflix. Like, it's always on. The kids are always watching this. And I think that was, like, part of the magic formula. Because, like, on the other hand, just like to rewind a bit onto, like, could Sony have predicted this? An original animated movie that is not attached to any existing IP. Yes, K-pop, big. People love K-pop. But not attached to any existing IP is a huge gamble. Like, there's
absolutely.
$100 million
no one
movie,
makes them anymore, right?
A high chance it's going to flop. Disney is struggling with its, like, Pixar label putting out its movies now. Even though Pixar used to be, like, an unassailable brand, like, their movies get no cut through now. So, like, the idea that and Sony's other big animation hit, which has, like, the same visual style as K-pop Demon, or similar visual style. They've kind of, like, pioneered it. Now everything looks like this. Was like the Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man movies, which were also absolutely massive. But that's fucking Spider-Man. Everyone knows Spider-Man. Spider-Man is always going to sell tickets. So it was, big gamble. So I can see why this was one of the things as part of this, like, +1 streaming deal. That they were like, okay, let's get this out there. But yes, I think the fact that it's, like, endlessly repeatable and it's just, like, constantly on in people's houses, and this is one area where streaming has succeeded, and this is basically the value proposition of Disney Plus, right? Disney Plus, yes, they have a bunch of, like, incredibly expensive, like, Star Wars and Marvel shows that bring in people who like those franchises, but, like, the core value proposition of Disney Plus is it has all the Frozen movies, and you can just play them over and over. It's like,
yeah, exactly. For parents
will not, they'll not churn out of it because all that stuff is there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you turn on Netflix Kids or whatever, and it's like, oh, new kids movie, put it on. There's, especially as, like, this, as I said, we were over in Europe, and it was European summer holidays over there. So you've got parents with just, like, their kids all at home. Chuck it on. The other thing I noticed was, so unlike Squid Game and whatnot, this wasn't a day one hit on Netflix. The line is like a straight line.
Yeah,
like just basically like it wasn't like pop that evens out. In fact, it hasn't evened out yet. It's still just going up diagonally.
Yeah, so it's just
which which suggests that, like, this wasn't just like absolute runaway success out of the gates. It was just like it just grew and grew and grew and grew, which to me suggests that, like, can you get that without it? Every household has friggin' Netflix nowadays. like with it being a kind of destination, go to the cinema release.
So yeah,
I don't know.
It's definitely harder to calculate because one thing that Netflix obviously has that you can't if you release a movie in cinemas, you put it in there, you need to do a big marketing campaign. You need to have ads on the sides of buses. You need to have YouTube ads. You need to be like hitting people over the head with the idea of like this is worth you spending a few hours of your day going out to cinema. And like sometimes this works really well. Like the biggest hit in the movies right now is Weapons, the horror movie. It's really good. That had an amazing ad campaign. And, horror movies are one of the only things that actually coax people into the cinemas these days reliably because it is actually a good shared experience. Like, people like sitting in a movie in a cinema and being scared together. Like, that is actually something you can't replicate with a home theater, with a home viewing experience. But what Netflix and other streaming sites can do is they can just, like, put K-pop Demon Hunters or whatever. They're like, all right, we spent $100 million on this thing. It is just going to be the lead tile on Netflix in every territory for a while. And that is why, I just talked about their most watched movie before was Red Notice, a movie that was not reviewed well, has had no cultural penetration, but it was apparently watched for like 9 billion minutes or whatever their like robotic metric is. And it's still got that despite, by all accounts, not being very good or interesting or compelling. But when you have something that is actually good, like K-pop Demon Hunters, which, whether it's to your taste, it's very well made. As you said, the music is great, whatever. They have the ability to just like slam it down their throats until it becomes viral. Because it has the value, it has the actual quality bar that will make it go viral. So yeah, I don't know. Would it have, but when it's the cinema, you actually have to get people to go. Word of mouth, building on top of like an existing ad campaign, much more expensive than just like slapping it in front of every viewer that's already subscribed, which costs Netflix nothing. So I don't know. I don't know if it would have, but it's also like, double-edged sword. Streaming can do that, but also there's so much streaming stuff that just vanishes, has no replay value, just like slips into the ether of the back catalogue and is gone forever. So, yeah, it pluses and minuses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be hearing about it for a while, I suspect. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Like, surely they can't fumble this. Surely.
I don't think they will fumble it because, I think it's got a sort of a life of its own. It's clear there is just, like, endless demand. Whereas, like, Squid Game, I watched that season of Squid Game and I thought it was fine. Like, I didn't think it was... I didn't think it was worth like a global craze and phenomenon. But like at the end of it, you wouldn't be like, wow, I'd love to see more of that. I need to see like the murderous game show, but with different contestants. I need to see, where is this plot going? Like it was all...
Well, I mean, you can tell that it's basically dropped off the face culturally. That year, I remember at Halloween, every slightly older kid was wearing some Squid Game stuff. Like, everyone had the little kind of plush toys everywhere, and like, and now it's gone. Now it's just vanished.
It had cool marketable iconography, like the boiler suit with the shape mask things they've got. Like, it had clear, replicable merchandising and everything there, but just like there wasn't a whole lot of depth to like the world of the IP it was putting together. And it was also clear that Netflix was just like, the only idea we have is just like absolutely flooding the zone with Squid Game content. And when that, let's do like a reality show version of it. Now they're still, as I said, doing a US version of it. But you can just feel it's like it's an inch deep. There's not much there. Whereas like, K-pop Demon Hunters is vibrant. You don't have to be a genius to look at it and be like, as you said, oh, you could do a video game with this. Oh, you could do more albums with this.
All right, cool. So back to our regular scheduled programming. We're going to do an episode for our premium subscribers, how much we love thee. We're going to briefly discuss... We're going to talk about Intel and the government taking a percentage share of Intel and maybe touch on some of not Netflix, friggin' NVIDIA. This is the thing with these like entertainment products. They just get into your brain, they worm your way in, they turn you into a marshmallow.
That's right.
We're going to talk about, much more important, NVIDIA's earnings. Yep. NVIDIA, that's right, folks.
That's right. We
sexy L's.
Bit of a flood of fancy into the world of South Korean globalized culture, but now we're back to core business. Silicon chips.